Paramount Global has officially merged with Skydance, and that partnership is already paying off with some huge announcements fans have been waiting on for over a decade. The new leadership at Paramount has finally revived World War Z 2, a project everyone thought was dead. The first film was supposed to get a sequel back in 2015 and was hyped as the ultimate zombie action blockbuster, but it ended up stuck in development hell. Now, not only is Paramount bringing the franchise back, but they've also launched 2 other major projects. TMNT The Last Ronin with an R rating and a brand new slate of Transformers movies. What makes this even more interesting is that until just this summer, World War Z was still Brad Pitt's highest grossing film, pulling in $540 million worldwide. Only his recent movie F1 managed to top that. And if you factor in inflation and rising ticket prices since 2013, World War Z still ranks as one of the most successful films of the past decade. The movie has also aged surprisingly well. Saber Interactive's tie-in game sold 2 million copies in just its first month, and the film itself suddenly shot back into the spotlight on Netflix this June, crashing into the global top 10. It even outperformed newer releases like the Super Mario Bros. Movie and the latest Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise. Basically, audiences reminded the studios that this franchise still has massive potential, especially at a time when early buzz around 28 years later was pretty lukewarm. And let's be honest, Hollywood has greenlit sequels for a lot less. So why hasn't the sequel been made yet? That's where things turn into almost a detective story. The first World War Z was directed by Mark Forster, and from the very beginning, it was pitched as the start of a full trilogy, basically a global-scale Jason Bourne series with Brad Pitt at the center. On paper, everything looked perfect. A $190 million budget, $540 million earned worldwide, solid reviews, strong DVD sales, and a cliffhanger ending that practically begged for a sequel. In theory, it should have been harder for Paramount not to greenlight Part 2, and yet somehow they managed to derail it. The trouble started with Forster himself. He was accused of rewriting the ending, pushing the production into chaos with massive reshoots, and forcing Paramount to delay the film multiple times. The problems were real. Studios don't usually spend $40 million on a giant finale, shutting down entire city blocks, spending a month filming an epic battle, only to scrap the whole thing later. The original ending wasn't the lab sequence we saw in theaters. It was supposed to be a massive showdown in Moscow, with endless waves of zombies clashing against Brad Pitt's squad in a desperate last stand. Paramount built huge sets in Hungary, brought in vehicles and weapons, spent tens of millions, and then tossed it all in the trash. The replacement ending was the quieter version we know. Pitt sneaking past the infected and stumbling onto the antidote idea. Naturally, Forster was blamed for the mess. The studio said he lost control, blew up the budget, and dragged out the schedule. Forster pushed back, claiming Paramount forced production to begin without a finished script, then panicked and demanded reshoots. Either way, the numbers don't lie. What was supposed to cost $125 million ballooned to $190 million. The movie still turned a profit, but the chaos left scars. Even though the cliffhanger was in place, Paramount president Mark Evans dissolved the team and ordered a fresh set of writers. After that, the sequel bounced around. Stephen DeKnight came on as writer, Juan Antonio Bayona was set to direct, and they even circled June 9th, 2017 as the release date. But Bayona walked away, leaving the project adrift again. Then came the biggest twist. David Fincher signed on to direct, with plans to start shooting in summer 2019. Fans were hyped, but just months before cameras rolled, Paramount shut it all down, officially blaming budget issues. Behind the scenes, though, the real story was different. Around that time, China imposed a ban on zombie movies, cutting off the world's largest box office market. Without access to China, Paramount decided a $200 million zombie epic just wasn't worth the risk. And that's the real tragedy, because the original plans for the sequel were massive. Forster always imagined the story expanding into a global geopolitical saga, where humanity finally strikes back against the undead. The first film ended with Brad Pitt's character discovering that zombies don't attack the terminally ill. In the sequel, that idea would have gone further. People all over the world deliberately infecting themselves with curable diseases, things that look fatal on paper but can be treated with simple medicine. It was a clever setup, and it fit perfectly with Max Brooks' novel, which was built as a collection of survival stories from every corner of the globe. In the book, the outbreak begins in China but stretches to the US, France, UK, Japan, and even a space station. One of the biggest mysteries surrounds North Korea, where satellite images show the entire population disappearing overnight. Some theories say they went underground, others suggest total extinction. Cuba, meanwhile, emerges as a new superpower. Its isolated location and strict border control allow it to survive and become a hub for refugees. The novel's centerpiece is what Brooks calls the 5-Year War. After the chaos we saw in the first movie, humanity doesn't just hide anymore. It launches a full-scale counterattack, eventually defeating the zombies and reshaping the planet beyond recognition. By the end, the United Nations counts only 72 surviving nations. India and Pakistan wipe each other out in a nuclear exchange, the European Union merges into a single state, and other countries collapse into internal crises that redraw the global map. These details, from nuclear conflict to Cuba's rise, are what made Brooks's book legendary. No wonder the original plan for the movie sequel was to adapt that war. Brad Pitt, as producer, even pushed to reuse footage from the scrapped Moscow battle to tie it all together. But none of that ever happened. When David Fincher stepped in, the whole direction shifted. He admitted he didn't want to make a globe-spanning war epic. Instead, he envisioned something smaller, grounded, and heavily inspired by The Last of Us. Not about politics or armies, but intimate stories of ordinary people trying to survive. Actress Mireille Enos, who played Pitt's wife, said the script under Fincher's version was surprisingly strong, focusing on emotional drama and psychological tension. But Fincher himself later admitted the moment had passed. The world had changed, and his take on World War Z 2 felt outdated before it could even reach the screen. There's another big obstacle. In the original book, one of the most important plot lines was about a fake vaccine, a placebo governments used to calm the public. When the truth came out, society completely collapsed. But after the COVID pandemic, that storyline feels not just controversial, but almost untouchable. And it's not even about politics, it's about audience perception. By 2025, it's hard to imagine viewers reacting calmly to something that close to real life. The same goes for the novel's geopolitical angles. China transforming into a federation, civil wars breaking out, nuclear conflicts reshaping the world map. That's risky territory for a modern blockbuster. Hollywood usually avoids stepping on landmines like that, not digging into them, which is why, if Paramount really moves forward with World War Z 2, the final result will probably be somewhere between Fincher's more intimate survival stories and the large-scale war epic from the book. The sharp political edges will get smoothed over, but the heart of it, the struggle of humanity fighting for survival, will remain. And honestly, that's exactly what audiences are craving right now. We've had enough lone savior narratives, dystopias about how terrible humanity is, and endless plots where politicians scheme in the shadows. What people want is a raw, muscular, and even inspiring story about humans banding together and finally pushing back against the undead. A full-scale planetary war against zombies, that sounds like the action spectacle the mainstream has been waiting for. The only real barrier is the budget, but if you read Paramount's official statement, money doesn't seem to be an issue. The studio has already named 3 franchises as top priority: World War Z, Top Gun, and Star Trek. All 3 are being fast-tracked for the big screen. From the original World War Z team, at least 2 names are confirmed. Producer David Ellison has been officially tapped to oversee the project, and of course Brad Pitt. Without him, a sequel would feel meaningless. The director, though, is still a mystery. Fincher scrapped his version and has moved on to other projects, ironically one that also stars Brad Pitt, which means the door isn't entirely closed. Either way, it's just a matter of waiting for the first official updates. On top of that, Paramount scored another huge win, poaching the Duffer Brothers, creators of Stranger Things, away from Netflix. According to insiders, the deal was insanely expensive. Paramount offered them nearly unlimited budgets, total creative freedom, and the ability to make not only series, but also theatrical films. And that's where things get really interesting, because if the Duffers now have that kind of power, who's to say they won't one day take a crack at World War Z?